Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. We're just at about 7:10 a.m. And in this first segment this morning, we will be chatting with Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt-Angus, former presiding officer of the Tobago House of Assembly. And we speak THA budget 2023-2024. We're looking at the fiscal package and the breakdown. This year's budget would have been themed Building a Sustainable, Prosperous, and Resilient Tobago. Good morning to you, Dr. Angus.
Good morning, Julian. Good morning to your Tobago Updates fans and, of course, everybody, wherever you are listening and viewing.
So I want to start off by getting your You have had the privilege of sitting from the standpoint of the chair, as well as being a part and sitting on different arms of the Tobago House of Assembly. Your initial perspective with what is being described, certainly as this is definitely the second presentation of a budget and a fiscal package with this current administration.
Yeah. From sitting in the chair, I think this administration has taken up an adversarial approach to everything. And I think that is part of my concerns with it. We all, in different countries, different leaders have to interact with other leaders, but you don't, even though you know that they don't get along as they should, or they don't have an appreciation for each other as they should, you don't have that public, expression of, of how you feel about the other leaders that you're not in sync with. And for me, that is the challenge that I'm having with the consistent blows from either side, throwing, and quite rough game playing. And I ask myself, for foreign investors who are sitting outside of Tobago, seeing leaders within the country behaving like that towards each other, are they considering that it is stable enough, an arrangement to invest, or whether they have to stand back and look on for now? And it is something that I think the administration, you can disagree without going to the level of rancor and viciousness in your language when you talk about various leaders.
Your positioning, and it's a very important, interesting point that you've raised. How do you then make the comparison with those who are probably of the view that the only time Tobago is actually able to get something or to benefit is, when there's this fight? Or would you rather say it seems to be politically expedient because people seem to love the concept of he or she is fighting for me and fighting for Tobago?
There's a difference with fighting and being downright disrespectful. In a fight, you don't have to be disrespectful. Yeah? And I think that we are seeing a significant increase in the amount of disrespect in the language, in, just referring to each other. And I dare say this, that today it may be the Prime Minister, tomorrow it may be you, and the next day it will be me. That kind of consistent disrespect will not just stay at the level of a Prime Minister or at the level of the ministers or the minority. One day, it is going to get to the people and to individuals, even within their circle.
Now, I want to do a little comparative with regards to the figures. Last year, at the very first presentation of this current administration, they would have requested an estimate of just under 4 billion, about 3.97 or so. When the budget was actually presented at the national level by central government, Tobago was in receipt of just about 2.6 billion, in keeping with that lower limit of the just over 4% by the Dispute Resolution Commission. This time around, in anticipation that the national budget is going to be higher, as the Chief Secretary would have indicated, the request has been just about $4.5 or so billion being requested this year. Are you hopeful any at all, that you will see an increased allocation, bearing in mind we seem to be very familiar with getting over the years what is closer to the lower limit of just over 4% of the national budget in relation to the dispute resolution. And most seem not to be familiar that the dispute resolution also gives an upper limit of, I think it's just about under 7%, 6.9 or so, 6.9%. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that, this is where the disingenuousness of the central government comes in, and especially the current PNM administration, because I heard the minority leader suggest that if we had the bills approved, we would have the 6.9%. But I'm here to say, they don't have to approve any bills to give us that 6.9%. And it is unfortunate that we have never even gotten to 5% in any administration, which tells us that, there's always a standoff. It is either that, and we can't say the administration has no confidence, because even when the PNM was in Trinidad and PNM was in Tobago, you got the 4.03%. But what was even worse, there were a few times where the monies were not sent to Tobago within the last administration, where Jack, as secretary, accepted some of the decrease in the allocations. So I would support, taking it to a court of law if the monies have been short, because I know that was alluded to. I would support them taking the central government to court to retrieve what was approved to them, and continue to advocate for more. But we see that successive central governments have no zeal to even give us anywhere close to the 6.9%, which is already approved. They haven't even given us, say, okay, let's give them 5% and see what they do with it.
As a means
And
of
that
goodwill.
has not, yes, and that has never happened. So I wouldn't hold my breath this time over.
You touched on the next area that I wanted to look at, the claims made by the chief secretary. So are you saying that from where you sit, there may be some legitimacy to it?
Yes.
In terms of the funds that would have been allocated, not all coming to Tobago?
Yes, because in the lead up to the elections, when we reviewed the finances of the the THA back then, we found there were instances where not all the monies came to Tobago that was due to Tobago. So I would advocate for taking that to the legal battleground and seeing where we get to recover those funds. And yeah, so I would support that.
All right. All right, viewers, as we prepare, we're going to be continuing the discussion, looking at some of the highlights and the areas. We're going to speak housing, education, a number of the initiatives that were presented by the Chief Secretary yesterday when we returned from the break. And we want to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. We're just at about 7:21 a.m. And this morning we continue the conversation with Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt-Angus as we speak THA budget fiscal 2024. And just before we went to the break, we would have started on just a few areas, and I wanted us to head on in. Now, we saw a scenario where the Chief Secretary described that notwithstanding the reduced amount that would have been received. And I'm only saying reduced in the context of what was requested versus what was received, but still in keeping with that, just over 4%. He highlighted a number of areas in terms of achievements that would have taken place over the year, even with limited funds. Your thoughts in relation to the achievements, but more so where you felt there were gaps in terms of areas that were not treated with based on the commitments coming from last fiscal.
Well, the challenge is that the overall view doesn't give a true picture of how the monies have been spent. And that is where we are hoping that the different divisions would drill down to show where those monies have gone. And we're still not hearing the overall recovery plan post-COVID to stimulate the economy and what was really done. Yes, monies was spent on roadways and all of that, but we see the conflict and controversy where were those monies that were spent, how much of it would have stayed in Tobago to continue stimulating the Tobago economy versus, were they spent in areas that took it back to Trinidad. So we know that controversy is there. We cannot ignore it. And, when they consider, because again, you go to your boss, you tell him you want a raise. He ain't give you the raise. You're still operating with a little more than what you had before. It's for us to sit down and see how do we adequately put the money where it is needed. And being on the ground, you're still hearing too many people crying out in pain about not even being able to put food adequately on their tables. So there is an underlying issue that has not been dealt with in the Tobago space in terms of treating with the quality of life of our Tobagonians. And I know that things can't turn over overnight, but still, there's still too many cries of people who just can't make the ends meet anymore. And we need to see, how did they treat with that in the last year? That has not come out clearly in terms of how it has been.
You spoke there, Dr. Angus, and I couldn't help but have a particular question triggered for me. Are we still at a point where it is we have not yet been able to dissect and to get the budget to a perspective that the average man is able to appreciate? And by that, I quite simply mean, if I am not in media or you are not necessarily in politics and we just going about our private lives, is it that we are still not yet at a point where the budget now has to be dissected in such a way so that it is able to reach the average man understanding how I am expected to benefit from this? Your thoughts?
Correct. And let's go back to the house. So money's coming into the house, you're having a salary. You need to consider if that salary cannot make it, and if every time you ask your employer for a raise, they're ignoring you, then how can you take those monies that you're getting in, yes, to put some food on the table, but to take some of that money and begin investing it in whether it is a business or something that can then begin to get you greater returns. So at the end of the day, if the employer gives you more money or not, you have the greater returns that you have coming in. And so that is one of the things that we have to look at. Where do we begin to spend that money? How do we spend it in such a way that we are building industries such that there is a return on an investment over time when you set up these industries? Take, for instance, we're having this carnival event. How do we move that carnival event from just, where it is into blossoming such that even though the carnival event has taken place, over the next year, you're seeing spin-offs from the investment you made into that carnival product. That it is not just a head-on-bed situation or a transportation situation that you can measure for persons coming in. We all know that we are in the realm of animation and, the digital world. How can we capture what has been happening and convert it into that platform and market it throughout the year, instead of games that young people play where it may be war games, you create a carnival game. There's so much that can be done with our cultural products, and we need to look at it. How do you marry fashion and music? There was a program that we had when I was there, looking at marrying the fashion industry to the music industry. When you purchase a piece of Tobago fashion, that you're purchasing also along with it a piece of a local artist. You know, you getting exposure on both ends. So we have to begin thinking more than just, okay, we get the budget from Trinidad and this is what we can spend it on. How do you invest? And we're not talking about just putting up buildings and building roads. How can we invest that into building out industries such that we begin to see return on investment over time, and therefore successive administrations, we don't have to keep up the total fight on, okay, I asked you for this, you didn't give me this.
So would you therefore say, and I'm tapping in a little bit to your experience here, I know you've served as secretary within the Division of Culture and so on, and also chair for the Festivals Commission. Would you say that we have to begin to look at what is more of a business model in terms of our festivals for Tobago? Because I mean, it came up in large question this year about quote unquote, a loss with regards to the jazz and the Tobago Carnival and so. And then, I had to remind persons that what we have to do is really look at a long-term plan. Give me your perspective on that, because for as long as I have sat and paid attention on the current platform, we have almost never perhaps done festivals with the intent to generate revenue, but the focus being in the first instance promoting the island. Where do we need to go in that context as one of the mechanisms in Tobago?
You mean where are we being forced to go? We're at the point now where, yes, we have to find ways to monetize the festivals. And monetizing the festivals is not just about gate receipts. There are many more ways to monetize it. And that is a decision that we have to make. And you have to realize that in order to go down the road of monetizing it, that you have to have some investments meaningfully placed to then begin see the returns on the investment coming back out of it. But yes, it is. In fact, we need to make a decision that anything we do on this island, how do we begin monetizing it so we begin to get the returns on investment? We can't continue saying, well, they didn't give us a raise. So, I mean, that language is outdated. They didn't give you a raise, no problem. What are you doing with what they gave you such that, you create your own raise inside of it?
All right. All right. We got to leave it there this morning, viewers. Thank you very much, Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt-Angus. We're just out of time for joining us here on the Tobago Updates, a morning show. And really sending a clear message. It doesn't matter where you sit from politically. You know that there's the need for more for Tobago. But even if that more isn't coming from central government, the institution and the government has a responsibility, and collectively as a people, we've got to find ways, just as we would do in our households accordingly. Interesting message coming forward here from Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt-Angus. Thank you so much for joining us here on set. Viewers, we prepare coming up next. We look forward to discussions with TPAC as we speak once on this island, the musical. So we look forward to those upcoming discussions, and we wish to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.